Once upon a time in the province of Quebec, there were no language laws. There were no referendums on Quebec independence. French and English coexisted. Then in the hippie 60s, the bombs went off.
Since the Confederation of Canada in 1867, the English-speaking minority in Quebec dominated the commerce in Quebec society. This caused a backlash for equality by the French-speaking majority in the 1960s. This was the Quiet Revolution. However, the pendulum of justice was pushed too far. A small hippie terrorist group called the FLQ started planting bombs in English neighborhoods in Montreal. They were complaining about English oppression and capitalism. The FLQ was demanding a French-only society in an independent Quebec nation. In 1974, the Liberal government of Quebec, with Premier Robert Bourassa, passed one of the first real restrictive language laws called Bill 22. Bill 22. Bill 22 had three main components. French became Quebec's only official language. After 200 years, English was no longer considered an official language. Access to English schooling would be severely restricted. Language testing was instituted for small children. A loss of freedom of expression in corporations and on signs.
Bourassa had passed Bill 22, which created French as the only official language of Quebec, and so destroying 200 years of history. And also for access to English schools, people whose mother tongue was not English had to pass tests in English in order to be admitted to English school, otherwise to French school.
Not well received, certainly not by the English-speaking community. There was a big, huge petition at the time against it. Not well received by the new Canadians who'd come here basically to be North Americans. They want their kids to learn English, to go into business and have the capacity to speak more than one language, obviously, and English was one of them. And Bill 22 took away their right to choose the school they want to go to. So there was a real lot of anger about it.
The nationalist tide had been rising all through the 60s, and Bourassa, I think Premier Bourassa came to the conclusion that language legislation was necessary. And the fact of the matter is that there was a problem.
I don't know if we were involved in any sort of unethical activities which involved suppressing French people or their rights. I'm not aware of this happening, but if that was part of the mythology of the era, it was certainly something that we saw a lot of, and we saw it mostly through the TV and stuff. I mean, we were insulated from it, but we were also terrified of it, the whole movement at the same time.
Without Bourassa, without Bill 22, there would have been no Bill 101. There would have been no charge to drive the Anglos and the ethnics out of the province of Quebec. Wouldn't have pitted English-speaking people against English-speaking people, and then all of the English-speaking people against basically all of the French-speaking people of Quebec. It was the catalyst.
Then, in 1976, the separatist party, the Parti Quebecois, formed the government. The PQ took language legislation much further. The new law was called Bill 101, or the Charter of the French Language. A law supposedly designed to protect and promote the French language at any cost.
The Liberals were defeated in '76. Levesque came in, And in 1977, the Bill 101 was passed. What is Bill 101? It's basically Bill 22 with a few minor changes. Those changes are unfortunate, though, because they set a tone which was very aggressive and pitted French against English. And that was a very unfortunate development as far as I'm concerned.
But when the PQ came to power, it just broke the spine, and I would say the brain, of the English-speaking community. From then on, everyone was running for cover. They kept thinking, oh my God, we can't demand language rights because that will anger the nationalists and it will bring about secession. So the fear of secession became the dominant driving force in the political action of the English-speaking community.
A quick summary of Bill 101 in 1976. Children of immigrants, Canadians from outside Quebec, and French-speaking parents are barred from English public schools. English and languages other than French is forbidden on commercial signs. Members of professional orders must pass French language proficiency tests in order to practice in Quebec. Municipalities that wish to have bilingual status must have a population consisting of 50% mother tongue other than French. Corporations with 50 or more employees must obtain a French language certificate. A language police will enforce language laws. Failure to comply may result in fines up to $7,500.
That when the separatists, when the Parti Quebecois came into power and then passed Bill 101, there was no one in Ottawa to fight them. I remember Trudeau saying very clearly, don't look to me to fight your battles, when his constituents in Mount Royal riding went to him and said, hey, wait, this law is a racist law. This isn't right, that we can't have English signs, we can't have English on signs, never mind English signs. I remember the black tape over English words on signs all over the province of Quebec, but specifically in English parts of Montreal.
Remember, Bill 101 said no English, so it was easy. If there was any English on a commercial sign, it was illegal. And people who kept it, and some did, were forced to go to court to defend themselves. It really is, crazy to force individuals to try to defend their rights. This sort of thing should be done by the federal government. They had the power at the time, and they continue to do so, to disallow these laws. That's why the disallowance power is in the Constitution, so that one government that tries to take away people's fundamental rights is prevented from doing so. And unfortunately, it was Pierre Trudeau who refused to do it.
So what you're saying is Bill 22, Bill 101 could have been vetoed.
They could have been vetoed by the federal government. Remember, the federal government's supposed to be there to defend minorities. This is supposed to be, a country of minorities. They didn't. They appeased Quebec nationalists during the mid-70s.
You can either say protect and promote a language, okay? You have a choice between heavy protection and a little bit of promotion, or a lot of promotion and a little bit of protection. It's a question of balance, okay? And unfortunately, we went too far on the side of protection.
As in Bill 22, there were tests. You'd take little 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds and subject them to tests. Well, what the Parti Quebecois did was to say, okay, we're not going to give them tests. They just can't go, period. That's it, end. Didn't matter if you came from Australia. Didn't matter if you came from the United States. That still is in place. You come from these English-speaking countries, you got to go send your kid to French school. So what does that mean to the English-speaking community? It means it is absolutely, it's institutions. It's schools, you shut down the community. It's schools, they can't grow through immigration at all anymore. And as René Levesque said when he passed it, the English-speaking community has to rely on, quote, the power of its loins, quote unquote. If there ever was a discriminatory, racist kind of approach to a long-standing historic community. It's in those lines.
In 1992, they issued a report, and they talked about a 57% decline in school enrollment since 1971, from 260,000 to 110,000. That enrollment, if you look on a graph, the graph is at 45-degree angle. It's in free fall.
You're not allowed to practice what is considered discrimination in education. If you have two publicly funded systems, which we do in Quebec, there's an English system and a French system. Now we know that English-speaking people in the province of Quebec who pay through their taxes for the French system can take advantage of it. It's a public system. So you can send your little girl, your little boy to a French school if you wish. But a French Canadian cannot do so to the English school system. And that is contrary to Canada's signature on the international agreement about discrimination in education.
The problem, of course, is that in 1982, when Trudeau and Chrétien were patriating the Constitution, they chose the same criterion, the language of instruction of the parent, to qualify the child, and they constitutionalized it.
And here in Canada, we don't practice racial discrimination, we practice language discrimination. But it's a prohibited basis of discrimination. You're not allowed to do that.
You know, as far as I'm concerned, the French-speaking people who wish their child to have access to English education, if they wish, if that is their wish, they can do so through the private sector. When it comes to public education, the rights you have are granted to you by the authority that pays for that education. In this instance, it's the government of Quebec. And of course, the government of Quebec is within its rights to decide not to finance public education in English for French-speaking people. Now,
but is it fair for the English to have the access to French and English and bilingual, where the French families aren't? Are we actually
discriminating
against the French speaking?
Well, you would be discriminating if it were a fundamental right, but it isn't.
Since 1971, there's been an outmigration of 400,000 English-speaking people. It is the largest internal migration in the history of the country. Nobody could possibly have guessed that the outmigration of English-speaking people would be so massive that it would skew every single demographic prediction that had been made. And Henri Payne was the only demographer of repute to acknowledge that not only had he made a mistake, but everyone else had made a mistake too.
It was half a joke and mostly a threat. It was 101 or 401. You either accept Bill 101 or take the 401. Take a hike, get out of here. And a lot of English-speaking people did. And I'm not just talking about people, who are, English background. I'm talking about a lot of immigrants, a lot of Italians, a lot of Greek. They just said, they left, and they left with their head offices. We all know this, that as a result of Bill 101, Toronto became the most important city in Canada. It used to be Montreal.
My closest friends, I remember in law school, they say, look, at the beginning of the year, they say, look to your left, look to your right, and neither will be there. And my closest friends moved. Now they say that they move for career choices and what have you, but the fact of the matter is many people left because they just didn't want to deal with the issue, the political issue here.
In 1980, PQ leader René Levesque and the separatist party Quebecois called for a referendum on Quebec's role in Canada. Quebecers were asked in the referendum if they would give a mandate to the government of Quebec to negotiate a new agreement with the rest of Canada. 59.56% voted no, 40.44% voted yes.
I remember the 1980 referendum. I was in elementary school and I had a huge big no pin, and we were always hanging out at the local shopping mall on our motocross bikes, and we were telling everybody, vote no, and we get dirty looks from passerbyers who were very, big yes supporters, and of course we were being cheered on by the no supporters. And I remember my parents being concerned. I remember friends leaving the province, young friends leaving the province with their families. We all knew in the back of our minds that Quebec wasn't going to separate, but it was sad to go through this whole process at such a young age.